All right, here we are with part 3 of the review. Today we're going to look at how fractions, decimals, and percents can be used interchangeably one with another and how we can convert between them. So we're going to look at this example here. A commercial suggests that 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Crest. You might have heard that on the TV at some point. What we want to do is express this as in 4 different forms, as a ratio, a fraction, a decimal, and a percent. Well, we're going to start with the ratio. 4 out of 5. If you think back to ratios, we write this as a ratio as 4 out of 5. A ratio, we have that colon in the middle. Okay. First number goes in front, second number goes at the end. Okay. So this would say that 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Crest. We can turn this ratio into a fraction simply by rearranging how we write the numbers. If you think about this as a mark on a quiz, if you got 4 out of 5, you would see this as 4 out of 5. So all we're going to do is turn this ratio from 2 numbers side by side into the 2 numbers top and bottom. You notice that the top number goes on, the first number goes on top, the second number goes on the bottom. To change this into a decimal, we can either go from the ratio or the fraction, it doesn't matter. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that first number. If we think about this fraction, this line in the middle again means divide. So if we think about what this means we're going to take 4 and divide it by 5. And if we do this on our calculator, 4 divided by 5 gives us a decimal of 0.8. So to change a fraction or a ratio into a decimal, all we're going to do is work out that division that the fraction tells us. And then to change from a decimal to a percent, what we want to do is multiply by 100. So we're going to take the decimal answer that we got of 0.8 and we're going to multiply it by 100. If I do that on my calculator, again, we got 0.8 multiplied by 100 gives us a value of 80, where this would mean 80%. So if 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Crest, that means that 80% of dentists would recommend Crest. Or if you got 4 out of 5 on your quiz, that would mean you got 80%. So again, a ratio to a fraction, all we're going to do is rearrange how we write the numbers. From a fraction to a decimal, we're going to divide the top number by the bottom number. And then to go from a decimal to a percent, we're going to multiply by 100. So let's look at some of these as we try and fill out this following table. We're given different values, and what we want to do is rewrite these values in their other forms. So if I start with this fraction, a fraction goes into a decimal, and to do that we're going to take the top number and divide it by the bottom. So in my calculator, if I take that top number 3 and divide it by the bottom number 8, I get 0.375. So we'll go from a fraction to a decimal. Again, I'm just going to divide my 2 numbers. Once we have that decimal, we can move to a percent by multiplying by 100. So I can multiply by 100. And if I take my decimal of 0.375 and multiply it by 100, we get 37.5. Because we're talking percent, we want to make sure that we add that percent sign on the end. So this would be 3 ways that we could write this same value. 3 over 8, or 3/8, 0.375 as a decimal, or 37.5%. How do we go from a decimal to a percent? Okay, well let's think about this. From a decimal to a percent is multiplied by 100. So when I'm given this decimal, I'm going to take 0.25 and multiply it by 100. Gives me 25%. Just like that. Now, how do I work backwards to a fraction? Well, here's how I do it. Once I have the percent, if you think, what does this 80% really mean? Well, if you had a mark out of 100, 80 out of 100 would be 80%. Okay, so percent just means out of 100. So I can take this percent and say that that is, 25% is the same as 25 out of 100. So to work back from a percentage to a fraction, we can say it is the percentage out of 100. So there's one other thing that we could do with this. We're not going to deal with it today, but we will look at it in one of the upcoming lessons, because we can actually change this fraction so it's a little bit nicer to look at. But for today, leaving it as 25 out of 100 is fine. If we start with 7%, okay, we could work from here to go back to the fraction. We could say it's the percent over 100. So if I've got 7%, I could say that is the same as 7 out of 100. Now there's two ways we can go to get the decimal. We can, now that we have the fraction, we can divide to get the decimal. So 7 divided by 100 would be 0.07 on your calculator. Or another way that you might want to think about this, you can use either one. But if we have the percent and we want to work back to the decimal, if we want to go this way, we could divide by 100. Okay? So if we're going from decimal to percent, we can multiply 100. If we want to go backwards from percent to decimal, we could do the opposite and divide by 100. Okay? Either way, we'll end up with the same decimal, 0.07. The final two here. Okay, 3 divided by 2. Well, from a fraction to a decimal, we can do that division. And in our calculator, we would get 1.5. And once I have a decimal, I can multiply 100 to get the percent. And 1.5 times 100 is 150%. Now you might be saying, how do you get 150%? Well, in a test situation, that's probably not likely, but this means that you're doing better than the whole amount, or you did better than perfect on the test. And if you look back to here, you can see if you got 3 marks out of 2, that means you got some extra marks somewhere, or you did better than perfect. So that's how we can come up with a percentage that's over 100. It just means you have more than the whole amount. For the last one here, 0.063. Again, I'm going to move to the percentage first because I know that all I have to do is multiply by 100. So if I do that in my calculator, I'm going to get 6.3%. And to change from a percent to a fraction, we said before that we can take that percentage and put it over 100. 6.3 over 100. Now, one thing that we really don't like in math is decimals inside of fractions. It's not technically wrong, we just don't like to see the two of them together. So what we can do to make this a little bit nicer to look at is if we take this decimal and we move it over one spot. So instead of 6.3, if I make this 63. Okay. What I'm really doing here is taking this value of 6.3 and multiplying it by 10. I can do the same thing here with my 100. If the decimal is here, I can take that decimal and move it one spot over to the right. But to fill in this place here, I would have to add another 0. So I'm going to add another 0 in here and make this 63 over 1,000. And again, when we're moving that decimal over, what we're really doing is multiplying by 10. And because I'm doing this on both the top and the bottom number, I'm not changing the overall value. Okay, so 6.3 over 100 is the same as 63 over 1,000. And if you want to double check, we could always take this 63 divided by 1,000, because if we do this division, we should come back to our decimal here. So if I go back to my calculator, 63 divided by 1,000 equals, 0.063, we end up with the same answer. So this value is actually the same. So today's focus, we're looking at converting between fractions, decimals, percents, and ratios. And feel free to go back over any part of the video or move on to the practice questions. Make sure you check off your checklist and hand in the worksheet once you have it done so I can have a look over it for you. See you later.